Good afternoon. Thank you guys for all participating in the Spring into Nutrient Management in the Potomac Basin Lunchtime webinar. My name is Stephanie Newmer, and I am a postdoctoral researcher here at the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin. I will be assisting with the behind-the-scenes coordination of this webinar, so please feel free to use the chat option to contact me with any technical difficulties you might be having. I would like to ask each of you to please mute your microphones and turn off your webcams and only turn them on for speaking. If there are any questions during the presentations, please type them in the chat, and the panelists will address questions during the question and answer session after all presentations have concluded. I would like to note that for anyone that is calling in using the WebEx phone number, please make sure you are using the US phone number and not the UK number, which may be the default. The local number is 202-860-2110, and our meeting number is 2552-373-0873. Just to let you know, this meeting will be recorded and will later be posted on the public ICPRB YouTube page for future viewing in case you need to reference it. If you experience any technical difficulties during this webinar, please ask for assistance in the chat, and I'm more than happy to coordinate with you to resolve them. Again, please be sure to mute your microphones and turn off your webcams. Thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce Mike Nardelili, the Executive Director of the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and welcome to all. I am Mike Nardelili, the Executive Director of the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin. ICPRB is a congressionally approved compact of all the jurisdictions in the Potomac River Basin, the Commonwealths of Virginia and Pennsylvania, the states of Maryland and West Virginia, and the District of Columbia. Founded in 1940, the ICPRB has been a leader in the protection of the water resources of the Potomac River watershed and in the coordination of various stakeholders in the delivery of clean and abundant drinking water to the DC area. Thank you all for attending this webinar to learn and share about nutrient management in the Potomac Basin. While nutrient management is important throughout the year, it's especially relevant now as residents plant gardens, farmers take to the fields, and plants are sprouting and beginning to be tended in urban and rural areas throughout the basin. It is important, though, to undertake nutrient applications with careful attention, as excessive nutrients are carried across the land into our waterways, can be harmful by contributing to algal blooms and reducing in-stream oxygen supplies for other aquatic plants and wildlife. These harmful effects reach all the way to the Chesapeake Bay, the largest and most productive estuary in the United States, and the Potomac, the Chesapeake's second largest tributary, is critical to the successful restoration of the bay. This event is being held as part of the implementation of the Potomac Basin Comprehensive Water Resources Plan, and you see the notation at the bottom of your screen about how to access that plan. And we are pleased to present a panel of experts who will share information relating to their organization's nutrient management activities in the Potomac Basin. This will be followed by a question and answer session with the participants. This event is being funded by a grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency under Section 106 of the Clean Water Act. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Heidi Maltz, who's our Director of Program Operations. Heidi?
Thank you, Mike, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Heidi Maltz. As we're here in the early stages of the 2022 growing season, the purpose of today's panel is to share information related to nutrient management for urban and landscaping practices, recommendations for homeowners, and innovations in agricultural nutrient management. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today, including Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program, the Frederick News Post Community Garden, and the University of Maryland College Park. Each speaker will talk for about 10 minutes to highlight their activities, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. So as you can see, we have a full agenda scheduled. Please type your questions in the chat box as we go to get them in the queue. This is going to help us make sure we have enough time for all of our speakers and to get to as many of your questions and comments as possible at the end. Carlington Wallace is the Associate Director for Water Resources at ICPRB. He's going to be monitoring that chat box, and I'm going to check in with him periodically to see if there are any clarifying questions that we should handle between speakers. But otherwise, we're going to plan to hold all the substantive questions until the end. And just by way of heads up, I'm going to interrupt to give each speaker a 2-minute warning towards the end of their time to help keep us on track. Okay, so let's get started with the panel. Up first, I'd like to introduce Gonzalo Ortiz. He is an urban nutrient management specialist with Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation. So Gonzalo, welcome and thank you for being here. If you'd like to take it away, please feel free to share your screen and proceed with your presentation, and I'll let you know when you have 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you much. So my name is Gonzalo Ortiz. I work for the Department of Conservation and Recreation in Virginia. My position is Urban Nutrient Management Specialist under the Division of Soil and Water Conservation. We use the term urban with turf and landscape interchangeably. So in some of our literature, you'll see urban nutrient management versus turf and landscape, but we use them relatively interchangeably. So nutrient management is the amount, source, placement, form, and timing of plant nutrients and soil amendments, with the outcome effect being positive increase in soil productivity, plant health, water quality, which is what we'll concentrate on today, and cost and quality of operations. We aim to achieve healthy plants while at the same time reducing nutrient loss to waterways and groundwater. Our program addresses nutrient applications both in the urban landscape and agricultural operations in nutrient management plans. Nutrients found in fertilizers, manure, biosolids, and other nutrient sources are managed in ways that protect groundwater and surface waters from excessive nutrient enrichment. We do this by, in the turf and landscape, we specifically do this by reviewing and approving nutrient management plans. And that is dictated by a document titled Standards and Criteria, which addresses unique situations, warm season grasses, cool season grasses, within the confines of first frost, last frost. That document is what we use to formulate and approve nutrient management plans done by the public or done by municipality employees or private nutrient management planners. Nutrient management plans are site-specific and tailored to the operator. They're continually updated for turf, general turf. It is a 3-year reoccurring plan where they need to start from scratch every 3 years. For golf courses, it's a 5-year plan, and any dramatic changes, they need to be addressed and addressed by resubmitting the plan with the updates. Required plans here in Virginia are state-owned land and golf courses. Also, I personally review MS4 plans, which are plans that are required for municipalities by the Department of Environmental Quality. And there are also other turf and landscape plans which are voluntary. I'm going to concentrate on a couple of the voluntary plans and programs that we do here in DCR for Virginia properties. Our main program is for voluntary and for outreach on both the commercial level and the do-it-yourself homeowner is a program that we administer called the Green and Clean program. From the corporate level or the commercial level, what we do with this program is, so we have this document, the standards and criteria for nutrient management plans. Through the Green and Clean program, companies voluntarily disclose their application programs and their application programs, and we compare them to what we're asking for in our standards and criteria. And as a motivator for them to voluntarily comply, we give them an opportunity to be part of this program, which we give them marketing material showing that they are within the confines of the rules of the standards and criteria, which I'll get into it momentarily. So on the commercial level, the Green and Clean initiative motivates these lawn care companies to follow the terms and criteria. The terms and criteria of the program are equal to the standards and criteria for a nutrient management plan. That is, the nutrient management plan is set out by the code for VAC 5085. On a do-it-yourself level, we, as an organization, DCR, and myself specifically, because I administer this plan, we give out literature to the homeowner by doing a lot of outreach. I'm going to show you what we do as far as giving guidance to the do-it-yourself applicator, and also indirectly with agreements with Extension Master Gardner's program. Through the program, homeowners will call the Master Gardner programs that are active in the Green and Clean program to come out and do a site-specific interview assessment and give them the advice of how to do everything appropriate to, again, the standards and criteria that we have in our plans. And I'm going to show you the advice that we give to the guidance that we give to the individual do-it-yourself. Is this visible?
It's no longer sharing your screen.
Is this, okay, let's see if I can do that. Okay, so for the do-it-yourself, for the person that has the capacity to just need the guidance for amounts and volumes of product to place, through the website we have our fertilizer calculator. All these numbers here are parallel to the standards and criteria numbers that I enforce in nutrient management plans. So this is for the voluntary do-it-yourself group that wants to participate in responsibly fertilizing their turf. And this is found on our website, dcr.virginia.gov. All these numbers are parallel to our numbers that we're pushing to the appropriate numbers that we have. And it is a simple do-it-yourself calculator, which gives you the information that you would need. This would be more for the person that wants the advice for the volume, but has the understanding of how to do it themselves. For the person that wants to do it responsibly and is starting from scratch, they reach out to Cooperative Extension, and the Master Gardener will come out and give them step-by-step guidance of how to do it by multiple site visits. Literature that we hand out for guidance for the do-it-yourself from the Green and Clean program is a step-by-step reasoning in a more simplified way of what we have in our standards and criteria. The advice of knowing from where you're starting, what kind of, if you have warm season grass, if you have cool season grass, the first step of testing your soil, that it's important to know where you're coming from, to know what you need to apply. The appropriate way of doing so. And indirect guidance, for example, of mowing heights and how it contributes to a positive effect. And what we are diligent with when we have our nutrient management plan, the explanation that nothing is to go to impervious locations like driveways or close to any way that it would go into the water system, so that it's just on the lawn itself.
This is Heidi. You have
And
2
this is the
minutes
guidance that we
remaining
give
of
out.
time. 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is how we reach out directly to the homeowner that wants to be doing and is contributing to the positive or negative outcome of our programs. This is how we get directly to the individual homeowner through this program and through these literatures. And I'll go out and do outreach in different parts here in Virginia. Now, the part that is on more of the macro level, but still under the commercial group, is the master Gardner program. Specific to the Potomac, the largest positive feedback and participation in this program is in Fairfax, Loudoun, and the Alexandria, right on the Potomac watershed, and that is also by population and socioeconomics the larger part of the Virginia commercial applicators, where they're mostly condensed up north, right in the Potomac watershed. So thankfully, we've had a lot of interest and involvement from the northern commercial lawn care companies, and that has been directly with myself with the Green and Clean program and guiding them to be compliant, and also on the micro level through the partnerships that we have with these Master Gardner programs about going out and explaining to the individual homeowner in that area, which is important because it's the direct area to the Potomac watershed, and it's also where the majority of lawn care companies, a larger part of the lawn care companies are concentrated in our state. I look forward to any questions that you all have at the end of the program, if you have any for me. And thank you for your interest.
Thank you very much for that informative presentation. I want to touch base with Carlington and see, Carlington, are you seeing any clarifying kind of questions in the chat for Gonzalo?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on to our second speaker. Jason Swope is a Chesapeake Bay landscape professional. Jason, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. You can please go ahead and share your screen and proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Heidi. Is everyone seeing my screen okay?
I do not see your screen.
Okay, bear with me 1 second here. I just did that.
Sure.
Do we have a screen up now?
I am not seeing it.
Hang on 1 second. I'm not sure why that is. Is that coming up, Heidi?
It is not coming through on our side. Would
Oh,
you
wait a
like
minute. I'm
us-
sorry. I got it here. Hang on a second. I was clicking on the wrong thing, I think.
Okay,
Let's
thank
try
you.
that.
Sure.
There we go. Apologize for that.
There it is. We can see it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Wrong share button. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Swope, and I'm a Level 2 certified Chesapeake Bay landscape professional. And really happy to be here with you today. I want to share with you some information about the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program and how our members are having a positive impact on nutrient and sediment reductions within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So I wanted to start real briefly and just kind of back up for just a second. And I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with this information, but wanted to just stop and remind everybody what some of the sources of nutrients and sediment are that wash into our watershed. And we know with extreme weather events, we've had more flooding, and with the urbanization and removal of pervious surfaces and more impervious surfaces, that can lead to a lot more flooding, and as that water is moved off site, it can lead to stream erosion and degradation of our natural areas. And also we get a lot of sediment and nutrients that obviously wash into the Chesapeake Bay with that, and that can lead to problems with algae blooms and reduction of oxygen in the Chesapeake Bay. And so within the industry, our response to managing these stormwater problems was to do what we call stormwater best management practices, BMPs. And for a homeowner in a residential situation, that might be the installation of a rain garden, like you see in the top left corner of the screen, or it could be in a office building setting or an urban setting. We might have bioretention ponds like we have in the bottom left-hand corner that has special soil in it that allows that water that's funneled into it from the building or the various impervious surfaces that's allowed to funnel into this area and then soak back into the ground and slow the possibility of water running off into our watershed. It could also be green roofs like you see in the bottom right-hand corner, or it could be impervious surfaces installed like pervious surfaces like pavers in the top right-hand corner that have space between them, and gravel that allows pore space for that water to flow down into the soil profile. And it could be pervious asphalt as well. All of these measures, these BMPs, are designed to slow and absorb the stormwater. And anything that we can do to keep it from running off in a rapid manner and entering into our watershed, if we can absorb it and slow it down, then that pollution and nutrients and sediment can go back into the soil profile where they can be treated by the plant material to be removed. You might also see in an urban setting on a larger scale, something like this BMP in a parking lot, where all of the runoff from the parking lot goes into these BMPs, and then that special soil in there will allow that water to percolate back down to within the soil profile. But what became quickly apparent was that these BMPs, while they were being installed, they were not always being properly maintained, and the consequences of poor maintenance became apparent. The public and property owners would kind of get a negative attitude toward BMPs. If they're not functioning properly, they might look ugly. They might just completely disappear from the inventory and be forgotten about as they kind of blend back into the natural landscape or the adjacent landscape. You know, they're oftentimes maintained by the same landscape maintenance crew that performs other maintenance services on the property, and they're not always familiar with the special needs of the maintenance for BMPs. And so it results in a kind of a poor use of that initial investment. And so the bottom line is maintenance of these BMPs matters a lot. And so the Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council developed the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program specifically to build a network of sustainable landscape specialists that were trained and have a really good understanding of how these BMPs function and how we need to maintain them so that they're not only aesthetically pleasing, but that they also perform properly for their stormwater practices. So we started in 2016. I was one of the students in the pilot program in 2016, and since that point, we have now trained and certified over 1,000 level 1 Chesapeake Bay landscape professionals within the watershed, and those are CBLPs in all 6 different states within the 64,000 square mile area of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And these pros are consistently trained. Level 1 focuses mostly on maintenance of the BMPs, and level 2 focuses a little bit more on the design and installation of the BMPs. But we also have a real focus on conservation landscape maintenance practices within the BMPs as well. And Chesapeake Bay landscape professionals, they're folks just like myself, longtime landscape contractor. We have folks that are arborists and florists. We have stormwater professionals, watershed managers, horticulturalists. We have people within the nursery industry that all have a passion toward seeing water quality improved in our watershed, and they all have a passion about understanding how these BMPs function and how they need to be maintained. And so the guiding principles of the Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council and the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program all kind of revolve around these 8 core principles that are outlined in this publication, the 8 essential elements of conservation landscape, which the Chesapeake Conservation Landscaping Council publishes, and you can find online and download. And in a nutshell, these 8 elements are to work with nature and to make sure that our BMPs are benefiting humans and functioning efficiently, and that we're using locally sourced and native plants in the BMPs that are appropriate for the conditions in the BMPs. We focus on managing and removing invasive plants. We focus on providing habitat for wildlife, which kind of connects with the use of native plants. And we want to promote healthy air quality, minimize air pollution. We want to promote healthy soils. We want to conserve energy, reduce waste, and the use of pesticides and fertilizers. And most importantly, we want our daily activities and the work that we're involved with to help conserve and clean water. We want our landscape practices to have a positive value to the ecosystem. We want them to perform valuable ecosystem services. And by using native plants and reducing the use of pesticides and fertilizers, providing habitat for wildlife, and maintaining these stormwater BMPs, we feel that provides positive value to the ecosystem.
You have 2 minutes left in your time.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So thank you. So our level 1 training, as I said, is focused mostly on maintenance of the stormwater practices. And in that training, we use the Sustainable Landscape Maintenance Manual, which was developed and written by Cheryl Corson specifically for our program. And this part of the grant was to ensure that this publication is available to everyone. And so you can go to the website listed there and download that publication. Level 2 is much more intensive and designed toward design and installation of these BMP practices. We've also developed an associate program which helps to outreach to youth and to returning citizens, and we try to develop their interest in mentoring them into entering careers in the green infrastructure field. And we've also, for people that maybe don't feel comfortable getting certified or are directly in the field working, we have CBLP pros that will assist in training directly with crews that are in the field doing the work. That's an outdoor 1-day PowerPoint-free training for people specifically in the field working on BMPs. And so to date, now we have over 1,000 level 1 trained CBLPs, and we have about 115 level 2 trained CBLPs. And we also have a lot of people that have gone through our buffer training or our maintenance crew training. And the outcomes of that are we self-report what kind of projects we're working on. And you can see that we are having a positive impact on the Chesapeake Bay watershed in the practices that we're installing, the areas of acreage that we're managing, and the square footage of conservation landscapings that we're installing. And those have led to directly to nutrient reductions and sediment reductions within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And if you're interested, you can certainly go to our website at cblpro.org. We do have some upcoming training programs and workshops, and you can always reach out to our executive director, Beth Ginter, Beth at cblpro.org, and I'll be happy to take any more questions afterwards, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for the great presentation, Jason. Carlington, are there any clarifying kind of questions in the chat?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
And this is just a reminder for folks as we go, if you want to type your questions in the chat box, we'll get them queued up for the end for our panelists. And now let's move on to our third speaker, who is David Muns. David is the manager of the Frederick News Post Community Garden and a master gardener. David, welcome, and thank you for joining us. I see Stephanie has your slides up, so please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. The Frederick News Post Community Garden was developed in 2008. I joined them in 2010. The garden is at 351 Ballinger Center Drive in Frederick. This gives you, we started with a 2-acre site. We expanded to another 2-acre site. We lost the second 2-acre site, had to abandon that because of development. Originally, we had 15 plots for employees at Frederick News Post. Now we have 135 plots for the public, including a number of plots where we donate food to the Frederick Food Security Network out of Hood College, about 5,000 pounds since 2020. Next. First of all, I would like to give credit to 3 people: Renee Barassa for taking these pictures, to Bill Conyers for help with the structure, and Autumn Bazo for doing a lot of the maintenance. What you saw in that last slide were orchard bee hives that we have. Recently, we have moved pollinator gardens to the bed. All of the pollinator gardens, the 14 different pollinator gardens, plus those on the edge, had been moved from that 2-acre site that we lost. So we have probably over 200 different kinds of pollinating perennials in the 14 beds. What you're looking at was developed by 3 Boy Scouts for Eagle projects. Next. We do have an apiary that Autumn Bazo and Bill and a number of other people help at. We have a video of this, if we can get that started. If not, you've seen bees before. We now have 12 colonies of honeybees, mainly for pollination, but we do get, of course, the honey from the honeybees as well. Next. Next. Oh, there we go. Okay, blueberries was the first real project I had where I had to add to the nutrients of the soil. We first got the soil tested before I moved the blueberries, 60 plants, from the field that we lost to the community garden. And it turned out to be about 7.2 pH. We had to reduce that to 4.5 pH for the blueberries to be sustainable. We used a lot of the soil that came directly from the soil, from the field we lost. We moved that over because we knew that was already about 4.7. So we added to that sulfur. Of course, when you adjust the soil, especially with the sulfur, you need heat, light, and water. So, of course, the summertime and the fall is the best time to adjust that. So it's now at 4.5. We also have strawberries, kiwi berries, gojis, blackberries, and 3 different kinds of raspberries on the property. Next. Now, in developing the soil, understand that the field, the 2-acre field that we got to use for the community garden through the Frederick News Post, they wanted to save money from having to treat it and from having to cut it. So they welcome us to do anything we would like to do over there. But because we accepted the field with nothing but sod and weeds, what had happened, this field was used as a storage area for both equipment and materials to build the Frederick News Post building. So we had a lot of work to do. We started by making the plots. As I said before, we went from 15 to 135 plots, each 12 by 14. People can get 1 plot, or they can get as many as 5 plots. What you're looking at there is a result of some recent soil management, where I developed a long row for pole beans, both lima and string beans, which included adding all kinds of compost to that, as well as anything else that was organic, including paper, shredded paper, anything else that we had. We also used a broad fork, which you'll see in a minute. Okay, next. Now, in order to make it possible for the 80 different families to garden easily, to make it convenient for them, we used a lot of raised beds. We used the lasagna method of layering cardboard, wood chips, compost, shredded paper, leaves, grass clippings, sod, and even coffee grounds. As a result of this, each bed can be used separately for different vegetables, which means that you can rotate things that cannot be grown in the same plot year after year, like your potatoes and tomatoes and peppers and things like that. Also, the water drains easily, quick into the soil. Most of these raised beds are anywhere between 1.5 feet and 2 feet high. They also are on the soil that we inherited, which was covered with about 1.5 feet of what they called soil, but was actually a lot of clay and rock, which we had to clean off. We also use a lot of different covers, crop covers for the winter time, including spinach and lettuce, which I harvest because it got through the winter, and daikon radishes because they go deep into the soil, and then the leaves spread out after they die, and it also adds organic matter to the soil. Okay, next. We use a lot of carpeting and cardboard to cover weedy beds. If somebody abandons a bed at the end of the year, everybody gets the same plot back. But if they leave, they probably have left it weedy. We have put this carpet out for several years just to sit out in areas where we wouldn't be planting food. But we put the carpeting down on top of cardboard, and it then attracts all kinds of earthworms underneath. Once you pull that off, the weeds are dead, and it can be worked back into the soil. And as well, you have all the earthworms that are in the soil ready to go. Next. The pathways we use as a composting site in order to keep from tramping on the soil, we use pathways. We put wood chips, mulch, cardboard, compost for several years into the pathways between rows of things that people grow. And then we add that to the beds a couple of years later. So that adds compost to the beds. It just really reduces the soil compaction, where you're planting. Next. I also use a method called contained composting, which I use. Since I can't control what maybe 300 gardeners are doing on the site, sometimes things get into the compost piles, the structures, we have 7 of them around, that we really don't want in beds. So we do get a lot of thistle, a lot of bindweed, a lot of Johnson grass, and we certainly want to keep that out of the compost. What I've been doing recently is using these little compost structures to fill them with things like grass clippings, clean plant residue, straw, kitchen scraps, and comfrey leaves, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Okay? Next.
You have 2 minutes remaining.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the vermiculture I use, the bed that you saw previously that is going to be the pole beans, I made a 2-foot wide and deep trench. And for the entire winter, I put all kitchen scraps into that. Then I use what you see in the picture. The name of this, it's a broadfork. It's called Meadow Creature. And it is super, you stand on there, drive the spikes into the soil, and lift up. We till very little anymore because, of course, that hurts the earthworms and other bugs that are in there that are good. It's a good tool to use if you don't want to disturb the soil much and reduces soil compaction. Next. This is a picture that is not like me at all. Renee insisted that she catches me sitting. Next. Cover crops I spoke about. This is my lettuce bed that was planted last October. It got completely through the winter. And then I just yesterday dug that under so that all that leafy material with the residue, plant residue, goes back into the soil. We also have gardeners doing barley straw, clover, rye, and other things as a cover crop. Next. This is my comfrey bed. It's used quite a bit for plant nutrients. Comfrey, if you know, was discovered by Ruth Stout back in the 60s, and it was used as comfrey tea, but they discovered that if you drank 50 gallons a week of the comfrey tea, you might get cancer. So that kind of killed that. We take the comfrey leaves, which are now up to my waist because these pictures, again, were taken in April, to make comfrey tea, which then I dilute 1 to 10, and I use that on the soil around the plants. Now, just to summarize, we move plants a lot during the season and yearly to provide a diversity of microbial populations. We keep things planted all year. We try never to have open soil. We disturb the soil as little as possible, retains the soil structure and saves the earthworms, and use a broadfork. It's great exercise for you and for your soil. Now, Renee has put a couple pictures on here next that are general things of the garden. That's my spinach that was a cover crop at the top. On the left is just a view of where the apiary is. In the middle are my strawberry. Top right, Ray Brown made a structure for collecting the water, a solar panel, a filter, a pump, and drip irrigation for his garden. And finally, down at the bottom, the other one of the honeybees. Any questions?
Thank you for the great presentation. Carlington, are there any clarifying kind of questions in the chat?
No, not at this time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, so let's move on to our final speaker. We have Michael Gerst, who is the Associate Research Professor at the University of Maryland, College Park. Michael, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Please go ahead and share your screen and move forward with your presentation.
Great, happy to be here and thanks for having me. So what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes here, assuming you can see my screen okay.
We are not able to see your screen yet.
Okay, let me hit share again. There we go.
There it is. Yes, thank you.
Great. So what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes here is a project that you all can think of as cutting edge science that's going to be coming in the next few years that might be applicable to a lot of the activities that you all are involved in helping improve the water quality in the Potomac River Basin. And so this project it's called DAWN. It's a dashboard or decision support tool for ag water use and nutrient management. And this is a USDA funded project that's in its second year. And what it does is it's looking at applying innovative forecasting and risk analysis that's really tailored to what farmers and water managers need. For now, we're focusing on the corn and soy belt because that in our proposal was sort of maybe the biggest bang for the buck for our funder. But ultimately, a lot of the stuff that comes out of this will be applicable to other areas. I do know, I think corn at least is grown in some areas within the Potomac River Basin. So there's some overlap in applicability even now. So I'll go through a few bullets of why this could be interesting for you when it becomes developed. So this is looking at providing seasonal predictions. So these are things that are at least 3 months lead time ahead of all of the sort of important planting or management variables that you're interested in. Things like, is the season going to be warmer or cooler, wetter or drier? Are you going to see more heat extremes or not? More storms that might damage the things that you're planting, as well as short-term forecasts for real-time operation. So, maybe if you're waiting to see exactly a week out what day you're going to go out and plant something. We're setting this up to be interactive and customizable. It's going to be driven by accurate and verifiable field level forecasts. We're setting this up so that the data is fully secure and confidential. Your data is not going to be sold anywhere. And it's cost-free, and emphasize that there's no ads or anything like that. This is a very large project, and I am a very small cog in this machine. We're spread out across a few universities, including Nebraska, the University of Minnesota, University of Illinois, and we have an industry partner in the Family Farms Group, which is headquartered out of St. Louis, Missouri. And so this is one thing I want to focus on for a minute, because I think most folks when they're used to thinking of science, they're used to thinking of something that's sort of incubates for a few years and is eventually just handed to them as is, without any sort of feedback process. And what's somewhat unique about this project is we have this sort of, at the top row here, the blue rectangles, a very cutting edge scientific system, where we're taking a modeling system that has weather, climate, agriculture, water, short and long-term forecasts at a sort of more coarse resolution. And then we're using field level or sort of site specific data that's going to be provided by farmers or other managers that is then going to tailor that information even more to your specific location. And while all of that is happening, we have extension and design teams that are from the beginning working with the people that we ultimately want to use our tools, so that they're always keeping us focused on the things that they want instead of showing up with something 5 years later that doesn't work for them. And I just wanted to show this. This is a somewhat these are somewhat complicated maps, but what this shows is the new forecasting technology that we're using, which is on the left maps for both summer temperatures and summer precipitation temperatures on the top, compared to the maps on the right, which is sort of the current state of the art. This just shows you how much more accurate these sort of 3-month out predictions can get. And the way you can look at these as the more white space you see on the map, the more accurate it is. And so for the region that we're looking at, the sort of Midwest Corn Belt region, there's a lot more white space for the CWRF forecasts, as well as for the Potomac River Basin area as well, which you can see. The way this dashboard is set up is that we're iteratively developing tools that are linked to the forecast system. So one of the early ones we're working on now is a crop progress tool, which I'll show you a screenshot of. We're also working on a irrigation specific tool, yield forecasts, and perhaps very important for this group, nutrient management tools. And so just to give you a sense for what this sort of stuff looks like, this is a sort of alpha or like version 1.0 of the crop progress tool that we're working on. And I just input an example just for you all to see the sort of capabilities these things have. So this is for corn, and this is an example of, say, a farmer is early in the planting season and they maybe haven't selected their seed varieties that they're going to use, and they're trying to run a few scenarios to see seed varieties versus planting date. And so what this enables them to do is they can look at various crop stages. So we have everything from emergence all the way to maturity. And some of these intermediate stages, the timing of these actually already have important implications for nutrient management and timing and application and that sort of thing. And so what this does is it gives them a probability distribution of when these things are likely to occur, and also gives them a sense of how that compares to the average. And there's also set up an options here so that they can compare it to a specific year in the past that they're interested in. So a lot of times farmers will say early on in the season, you know, I think this is going to look like, I don't know, 2016 or something. And so you can actually choose to put in 2016's data, and this will tell you in reality how likely we think it is for this year to turn out like 2016. And so this allows you to make sort of planning decisions. Once you get stuff in the field and planted, you can rerun this over the growing season to narrow the sort of uncertainty in the forecast. And that can help with everything from nutrient management to irrigation to harvest times and marketing, various other things like that. This is obviously a corn-specific application, but I hope you all can see, you know, the forecasting that's under the hood with this. It can be used across many different applications that I think will ultimately be very relevant for this group. So with this sort of very quick, short introduction, I'd like to pitch that we're always looking for partnership opportunities. And what this looks like is you can get in touch with us, help us assess and evaluate tools. You can perhaps access tailored and advanced decision support tools before they're sort of available to the general public. A lot of times we interview people and they sort of tell us what they think and talk about features they'd like to see. And ultimately, this could allow you to shape the development of a dashboard that could meet your needs once this sort of test case in the Corn Belt is finished. And finally, as always, please get in touch. This is my name and contact email, as well as the general email address for the whole project. Okay, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Carlington, are there any clarifying kind of questions that we should pose to Michael at this time?
No, there are no clarifying questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all four of our speakers for their presentations. And with that, I'll turn it over to Carlington Wallace, who's going to moderate the Q&A session.
Great. Those were really lovely presentations. And while we wait on folks to type their questions in the chat or raise their hands, I'll get started. I think the first question here comes from Jason Swope, and it's for Gonzalo Ortiz. Jason wants to know, are there restrictions for Virginia residents regarding the application of phosphorus in their lawn areas?
Jason, in regard, Jason, was that in regards to that calculator?
Well, yes, I was curious because I know in Maryland, there's, unless you have a soil test that specifically says you need phosphorus, most fertilizers in Maryland are not allowed to be sold that have phosphorus in them. And I was wondering if there were similar kind of restrictions or regulations in Virginia, specifically around phosphorus.
Okay, so I guess to most properly explain that, so we do guidance, right? So all our guidance is, again, as you said, predicated from a soil test. So any literature that we hand out, it's going to be from a soil test. All of our standards and criteria for nutrient management plans are also based on a soil test. And so very high, middle plus, et cetera. We'll give you a specific based on your soil test of what they can or can't do. But DCR and what I do, we're more outreach and guiding them as far as they need to do a nutrient management plan for like a commercial or someone a plan for a private homeowner. It's cut and dry. You can or you can't based off of your soil test and the person that's reviewing that, either myself for like something official for an official nutrient management plan or someone that's guiding through our programs to the homeowner. That's all based on what they can or can't do based off their soil test. So like if phosphorus is high, they're not going to be able to apply anything. If it's medium plus, though, it's a lower volume phosphorus application, et cetera. So it's very site specific, tailored on the soil test, like you said. When it comes to what someone can or can't do legally, that's regulated by the Department of Agriculture here. It's for VDACs, VDACS. What they can or can't do legally as a nutrient management plan is predicated from our standards and criteria, which is binding from a nutrient management plan. But as far as like the individual homeowner and guidance that's given from DCR, it'll be predicated from that soil sample and from our law, which is standards and criteria, what they can or can't do. But as far as like blanket statement, what someone can or can't do, that's more of a VDACs question. But DCR is 100% soil test, and on a commercial level, and when it comes to plans or from our programs that we support and sponsor, again, it's a soil test, and it's very specific to the amount of phosphorus that they have. They can't go out, get guidance from our groups and then go out and apply phosphorus because they bought 10-10-10, for example. And that's almost as phased out as it is in Maryland, those types of products that have like 10-10-10, et cetera.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the important thing is you're basing it off of a soil test, and that's great, rather than just basing it off of whatever bag of fertilizers at the box store to buy. And
100%, exactly.
And
it's based on the recommendation, all recommendations from these organizations that myself and DCR, it's 100% from the soil test and standards and criteria. It's not a willy-nilly, it's a prescribed application. It's not a generalized application.
Perfect.
Even that calculator is predicated from their soil test and what you can or can't do based on that soil test.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's the way to go. And I think the ability then for homeowners to have a consultation with a master gardener right there on their property where they can kind of explain it a bit more and kind of go through the results of the soil test. I think that's a good way to make a connection with the community and with the homeowners and kind of really kind of develop and drive the point home of the importance of proper nutrient management.
Completely agree with you. The industry on a commercial level has been on board for a couple of decades now, and the last like large scale negative impact is the homeowner that's underinformed. So when everything is tailored, like with this program for, like you said, an extension agent or a master gardener coming to a specific person's property, it helps a lot because that's like the last frontier within our conversations of the large scale issues, because the commercial people have been on board for decades now, and the people that have, it's the same, this conversation has nothing to do with pesticides, but I was a VDACS employee before, At the end of the day, it's about similar thing. The larger contributors left because the commercial professional people have been on board with being stewards for decades now. It's the individual doing their own application.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Gonzalo. The next question goes to David Muns. While we're on the subject of Master Gardner, do you have your soils tested by a state facility, or do you use commercial soil testing kits?
I get my soil tested through Penn State Extension. University of Maryland used to do it, our southern states used to do it, but I go through Penn State, and we do it more or less on a regular basis. In fact, some of the individual gardeners have their soil tested before they even start. By now, we have probably put $200 to $300 or 200 to 300 cubic yards of that much money too into soil that we get from Wrights Ford, the Frederick County landfill, that is constantly tested. People can see the test results online.
Thank you.
There are self-test kits, but I don't find they're complete enough to really give you a good recommendation of what you need.
Okay. So while we're on that topic, you did mention the use of newspapers and mulch in your in farming activities. Now, would you say that landscape fabric offer the same benefit in terms of nutrient retention in the soil?
Oh, absolutely. And understand that when we use mulch, we never put that directly on the bed that we're going to plant. It will go into the pathways to be able to be composted more. In fact, I have some gardeners who take all their old plant debris and put it in the pathways and walk on it and for several years before they add it onto the top. But a straight pine wood bark mulch, I don't think we ever use that on a garden plot.
Okay, thank you. The next question goes to Jason Swope, and it's regarding the CBLP trainings. Who are available, or who can participate in your level 1 and level 2 trainings? Do you have to be a state or federal employee? Or can anyone participate in those training programs? Jason, I think you might be muted.
There we go. The level 1 training, I believe, is open to anyone within the industry. I think that, and I have to think back to when I originally applied for the program. I think you might have to show that you work within the industry in some capacity. But I think that most everyone that's interested in the program is able to apply and get into the program. There are requirements after you're certified to kind of report on an annual basis and show that you're involved and to show some sort of a project that you're involved with that's related to the CBLP program, because we're looking for people that are going to practice what they preach and go out into the field and use what they learn. And we're not as much interested in certifying somebody just so that they can have that certification after their name and not necessarily apply those techniques and that training in their daily work. But as far as the level 1 certification training, that's open to anyone within the industry that's interested and wants to get involved.
All right, thank you. The final question goes to Michael Gerst, and it's in regards to the decision support system that you're currently developing with the other partnerships. Are there a version that is available that anyone can use to run tests in their area and see, can accrue some benefit from that?
Right now, we're in a bit of the development phase, and so it's not available in all areas yet. But I encourage people who are interested in general to just get in touch, and if they're interested in being part of the process of help designing things that will eventually be used in their areas, I would really welcome that.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm gonna open up the floor for, whoever wants to ask any final questions. The panelists have been gracious enough to give us until 1:10. So with that, there is an extra 4 minutes. If anyone have any additional questions, you can turn on your microphone and your camera and go ahead. Okay. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, I would like to take the opportunity to, to thank everyone for joining us today, as we have come to the end of our Q&A session. And a special thank you to the panelists for, taking time out of their busy schedule to share with us today. We did mention that the session is being recorded, and you'll be able to access the recording of today's session via our YouTube page, which you will learn about later. This webinar is being held as part of a series. We held our last event back in January of this year, when we discussed winter salt management in the basin. And today we discussed nutrient management. We welcome your ideas on future topics. So please be on the lookout for a follow-up email from us with some post-webinar questions that will help to shape future webinars. So thank you. And with that, we have come to the end of another in our series.